The 6th of August 1945. The day is unlikely to be forgotten by the people of the land of the rising sun and the rest of the world. On this day in Japan, they honor the memory of the victims of the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. 72 years have passed. Little Boy, that was the code name of the bomb that incinerated everything around in a split second. 3 days later, another atomic bomb was dropped, this time on Nagasaki. More than 450,000 people became victims of the two bombings. The cities resembled a cauldron with boiling tar where innocent people burned alive. Decades have passed, but history has captured the tragedy of the war. It's a reminder of a reckless game with an incredible force of nuclear weapons. The tragedy of other people thousands of miles away from Hiroshima and Nagasaki should be remembered too. A few years later, the Soviet Union made its own nuclear bomb, and the decision was made to test its power in the Kazakh steppe. At the junction of the East Kazakhstan, Pavlodar and Karaganda regions, one of the world's largest nuclear test sites, Semipalatinsk, was created. On August 29, 1949, the Soviets conducted their first nuclear weapons test here, and there were 456 more in the next 40 years. For the record, the total power of nuclear charges tested over these years was 2,500 times higher than the power of the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima. Radioactive fallout spread over more than 300,000 square kilometers, inhabited by approximately 2 million people. As a result, the Semipalatinsk region became a zone of ecological disaster. Great damage was done to the health of the local population. Up to 1.5 million inhabitants of the region were exposed to radiation. Reservoirs and pastures were polluted. Cases of cancer and cardiovascular diseases became more frequent among the population living near the polygon. The death rate increased, more children with congenital defects were born. The tragedy reached a great scale and the public could not turn a blind eye to it. In 1989, the Nevada Semi-International Anti-Nuclear Movement was established. The organization's goal was to close the Semipalatinsk as well as other nuclear test sites around the world. Olja Suleimanov, a poet and a public figure, was the leader of the movement. Mass protests prevented 11 out of 18 explosions that were planned at the Semipalatinsk test site at the time. The movement received the support from Kazakhstan's leader, Nursultan Nazarbayev. As a result, on August 29, 1991, he issued a historic decree on closing the Semipalatinsk test site. The head of Kazakhstan, which was then part of the Soviet Union, made an unprecedented historic act by making a unilateral decision to close the polygon used by the military of the largest nuclear power in the world. Moreover, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the young sovereign Kazakhstan inherited the world's fourth largest nuclear arsenal. Once again, the president of the newly independent state made the only right decision, as the country voluntarily renounced its nuclear weapons. Thus, Kazakhstan set an example in nuclear safety and arms reduction for the whole world. This was despite the fact that the Kazakh president received many alternative proposals. For instance, in 1992, the former Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi suggested that Nazarbayev should leave the nuclear arsenal in Kazakhstan so that, in his words, the Muslim world also owned a nuclear bomb. If Nazarbayev agreed, Gaddafi promised billions of dollars for the storage and maintenance of the arsenal. However, the Kazakh president, as a true statesman, was guided by strategic considerations and not the opportunism. Thus, the president of Kazakhstan resolutely adhered to the policy of non-proliferation. For instance, in 1992, the country began to implement the Cooperative Threat Reduction Program, also known as the Non-Lugar Program. It was a vivid example of the successful multilateral cooperation in the field of disarmament with the direct participation of the two nuclear superpowers, Russia and the United States, as well as three now non-nuclear states, Kazakhstan, Ukraine, and Belarus. The program resulted in projects implemented to destroy the infrastructure and facilities for the production and storage of nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. In 1993, the Kazakh Supreme Council ratified the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons. The multilateral agreement obliges the participating countries to take practical measures to reduce the threat of weapons of mass destruction. In 2006, Kazakhstan, with the support of the neighboring Central Asian states, signed the Central Asian Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone Treaty. According to its regulations, the parties undertake to prohibit production, purchase and distribution of nuclear weapons and their components or other nuclear explosive devices. The zone in Central Asia has a number of unique features. It is the first nuclear weapon-free zone located in its entirety in the Northern Hemisphere and bordering two nuclear powers, Russia and China. Also, it is the first nuclear-free zone in the region where nuclear weapons existed in the past. As a result of the agreements with the leading powers, Kazakhstan acquired security guarantees, strengthened its state sovereignty, and protected itself from external threats. On Kazakhstan's initiative, in December 2009, the UN General Assembly adopted a resolution to establish the International Day Against Nuclear Tests on August the 29th, the date when the Semipalatinsk test site was closed. And in December 2015, the regular meeting of the UN General Assembly adopted the Universal Declaration of Nuclear-Free World that was initiated by President Nursultan Nazarbayev. The adoption of the resolution once again confirmed the independent foreign policy course of the President of Kazakhstan and its positive perception in the world. In 2012, at the plenary session of the conference From the Ban of Nuclear Tests to a World Free of Nuclear Weapons, President Nazarbayev announced the launch of the Atom Project. The acronym ATOM stands for Abolish Testing, Our Mission. Within the framework of the project, anyone who opposes nuclear weapons can sign an online petition calling on the governments of the world to permanently abandon nuclear testing and to bring about an early entry into force of the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. The goals of the Atom Project were clearly formulated by its honorable ambassador, Kazakh artist Karibek Kuyukov, who himself suffered the consequences of nuclear tests. The goals of the peaceful policy of Kazakhstan were summarized in the manifesto of President Nursultan Nazarbayev, The World, the 21st Century, which was presented to the public during the Nuclear Security Summit in Washington in the spring of 2016. The document is a fundamentally new global anti-nuclear and anti-war platform for long-term action. Its basic provisions on the reality of achieving a new safe world for all can become the basis of a worldwide disarmament movement and an effective roadmap for all global states. The international community has responded to the initiatives of Kazakhstan. One of the most authoritative associations in this field is the Pugwash movement. The international non-governmental organization unites scientists, political and public figures for peace, disarmament, security, and scientific cooperation. The movement's founding document was the Manifesto of Russell Einstein, whereas the organization's name is connected to the venue of the first conference held in the Canadian village of Pugwash in 1957. The movement played an important role in the development and adoption of key multilateral agreements in the field of non-proliferation and elimination of the weapons of mass destruction. In 1995, the Pugwash movement was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize for its active role in seeking nuclear disarmament. According to the representatives of the movement, Kazakhstan was chosen as a suitable place for holding a Jubilee meeting of scientists in 2017, as the people of Kazakhstan suffered the consequences of nuclear tests, and today, under the leadership of President Nursultan Nazarbayev, the country is a recognized leader in matters of nuclear disarmament. Kazakhstan's next step in supporting non-proliferation of nuclear weapons is hosting the Low-Enriched Uranium Bank under the auspices of the International Atomic Energy Agency. A unique project is being implemented on the grounds of the Oba metallurgical plant in the city of Uсть-Kamenogorsk. It will enable the conditions for solving problems related to the development of peaceful atom in countries that do not have a full cycle of uranium enrichment for use in the production of power at nuclear reactors. Speaking at the 70th session of the UN General Assembly in New York in September 2015, President Nursultan Nazarbayev proposed that creating a world without nuclear weapons should be the main goal of humanity in the 21st century. In his view, it is possible to achieve this goal not later than the United Nations Centennial in 2045. According to Nazarbayev, it is necessary to create nuclear-free zones in other regions of the world, particularly in the Middle East. The nuclear powers must provide guarantees of non-use of force to all countries that have renounced the possession of nuclear weapons. To this end, the president of Kazakhstan proposed the creation of a global anti-nuclear movement. At the same time, every person on the planet can and should contribute to the struggle to ban nuclear testing, and, in the not-too-distant future, the nuclear weapons themselves. Surely, this is a very noble goal, a goal that deserves everyone's support.
Um, Ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me and an honor to open this gathering and this conference. First of all, I want to thank warmly the government of Kazakhstan, Senator Tokayev, who is sitting near me, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, the President of Kazakhstan, for all the help that we have got in organizing this meeting, and we are proud of being here. The conference we are going to start today has to do with nuclear dangers. And yes, Kazakhstan has been affected by nuclear weapons very much, as we just heard and saw. And Kazakhstan has been very important in stopping and contributing to stopping nuclear tests. It is not by chance that one of the speakers of this conference will be the Secretary General of the Comprehensive Test Ban Organization, Sergio, that will tell us about the status of the treaty that forbids nuclear tests. But it is important, and since we are here in Kazakhstan, that we remind of the adverse effects of nuclear tests in terms of health, in terms of the environment, in terms of people, but also in terms of politics, since the nuclear tests are contributing to the creation of new nuclear weapons. We are here dealing with nuclear weapons in general, meaning we want to discuss about disarmament, prospects for disarmament, the issue of non-proliferation, which is an important one. The less countries have nuclear weapons, the better it is. Ideally, we would like to have no country to possess nuclear weapons, but few is better than many, much better than many. And so non-proliferation is a key issue. We will discuss about nuclear risk. Since the nuclear weapons still exist, we have something like maybe 15,000, 16,000. Numbers can vary according to the various opinion and the various estimates. But anyway, this is a lot. Many, many nuclear weapons. Most of them are in the hands of Russia and the United States, but quite an important number are in the hands of countries that live in places and in an environment where there are lots of tensions. So what we are going to discuss here is not only the prospect for disarmament, for the elimination of nuclear weapons in general, and the test and the ban treaty of nuclear weapons in the UN, which has been discussed in July, is one of the most important steps forward which has been taken recently. But we want also to discuss about the dangers related to possible nuclear use. We have nuclear weapons state nearby, India, Pakistan, we have Israel, we have North Korea, we have, of course, all the China and Russia. There are also nuclear weapons. And for the region here, the risk of using nuclear weapons is something which is not so remote, and anyway should be considered very seriously. We are going to discuss what can be done in order to facilitate dismantling nuclear weapons and avoiding the mixing of nuclear energy activities with the danger of proliferation. And I think the idea of having here in Kazakhstan a nuclear fuel center, international fuel center, is a very important one. That's something that we would like to push and promote all over the world. We need to have international cooperation for the production of nuclear fuel for nuclear energy plants in a way that we have reciprocal control and basically a check that none of these nuclear fissile materials can be used for military purposes. Having said that, I think I would like to just again welcome you all, and you will see if those who are not able in position to attend, we'll see the report of our discussion soon after the end of the conference. We have a very variety of participants with different countries. We have people from America, even including Latin America. We have people from Europe, we have people from Russia, from China, from South Asia, including Afghanistan, Pakistan, and India. We have people from the Middle East, including Iran, Israel, and Egypt, and so on, and Saudi Arabia. And we have people from Northeast Asia, Japan, Korea, and so on. Our organization is an organization which is in fact international, and we would like to spread around in all possible ways the idea that we are proposing the elimination of the nuclear danger, and as according to the Russia-Einstein Manifesto, which has been quoted in the film that you have seen, we would like to understand that elimination of nuclear weapons goes together with the reduction of conflicts. We cannot expect conflicts to flourish and nuclear weapons to be eliminated. So that's one of the messages of this conference, that there is a correlation between conflicts and nuclear risks, and we would like to address both of them in a serious way. Again, thanks so much for your participation. Thank you for the authorities which have sponsored our meeting here. I am very happy to see you, and we will see you again during the conference and afterwards. And we hope that this country, this wonderful country with this wonderful capital, will be seeing us again to discuss this important issue with the important contribution given by the authorities of this country. Thank you so much.
Your Excellency Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, Chairman of the Senate of the Parliament of Kazakhstan, distinguished members of the Head Table, high dignitaries of the Government of Kazakhstan, distinguished guests, members of Pugwash, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the 62nd Pugwash Conference on Science and World Affairs and the 60th anniversary of the Pugwash movement, which in a sense preceded 60 years when in 1955 the London Manifesto was co-signed by Bertrand Russell and by Albert Einstein. It was possibly the last historic document signed by Einstein before his death. And we adhere to the fundamental principles laid down in that manifesto, particularly the last three words, which talks about remember your humanity. And I think it's that humanitarian concern for the human race that lies at the bedrock of the Pugwash movement, and which has embraced scientists from so many countries to work together for the elimination of nuclear weapons. The documentary that we have just seen expresses more eloquently than I can the history of the nuclear age and efforts being made by both the nation of Kazakhstan and their leader Nazarbayev, as well as Pugwash. Pugwash, as I said, is 60 years old, and we have in 1995 been rewarded by the Nobel Peace Prize Award, which talked about what we were doing all these years in order to propagate the cause of nuclear disarmament and nuclear non-proliferation. In the case of Kazakhstan, since 1991, when it regained its independence, we have seen an ancient nation become a modern nation. inspired by the struggles of its people, the poetry of Abe, and other artists like the gentleman we saw in the documentary, to capture the principles of the founding president, President Nazarbayev, who has done so much for the cause of nuclear disarmament. Beginning with the creation of a nuclear weapon-free zone in Central Asia, a project in which I was privileged to participate as Under-Secretary General for Disarmament in the United Nations. We have seen Kazakhstan converted into a dialogue platform, not only for nuclear disarmament, but also for conflicts like the Syrian conflict, where the Astana process is contributing towards the search for a solution, a political solution which alone can end the deaths and the killings that are taking place in that unfortunate country. Pugwash also talks about having a dialogue across divides. And wherever there are conflicts, we have, from the inception of Pugwash, been negotiating silently in two-track diplomacy in order to try to achieve peaceful solutions to these disputes. And we have focused on situations where nuclear weapon states are involved in disputes so that we reduce the danger of nuclear conflict. We have had modest successes which have not been advertised, but from the time of Vietnam, we have been carrying messages across dividing lines and trying to ensure that there is a dialogue. We continue to engage in that task because we believe that the task of peace is an extremely important one, particularly in the nuclear age. I'm very pleased to introduce our keynote speaker this morning, whom I first met in 2002 here in Astana, when I was representing the United Nations negotiating the Central Asian Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone. He was then Minister of Foreign Affairs and laid the groundwork for the excellent record that Kazakhstan has had in nuclear disarmament, and which in this month will, of course, see once again the anniversary of the closure of the Semipalatinsk site, which was the focus of so many nuclear weapon tests in the past, the dawn of many other initiatives taken by President Nazarbayev, including on the 30th, the inauguration of the low-enriched uranium bank, which is a great tribute to the way in which Kazakhstan has contributed towards the strengthening of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. In particular, it will strengthen the two pillars of the peaceful uses of nuclear energy and non-proliferation. I think this great contribution will be inaugurated in the presence of the Director General of IAEA, and I think many of you have been invited to that event. So, Chairman Tokayev has been very important in a role in this. He was also, to the benefit of the UN, Director General of the UN office in Geneva, and in that capacity was also Secretary General of the Conference on Disarmament. He has returned now to the post of Chairman of the Senate of the Parliament of Kazakhstan, and I welcome the fact that he is participating in the opening of this conference and helped in many ways towards facilitating the holding of this conference, for which I thank him very much. I give the floor now to Chairman Tokayev.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dhanapala, for your kind introduction. I'm very happy and delighted to see so many friends and colleagues here in this conference room. Құрметті президент Dhanapala мырза, құрметті Біріккен Ұлттар ұйымы бас хатшысының орынбасары Nakamitsu ханым, құрметті ядролық сынауларға жан-жақты тыйым салу туралы шарт жөніндегі ұйымның атқарушы директоры Sergio мырза, құрметті конференцияға қатысушылар, ханымдар мен мырзалар. Кең байтақ Қазақстан жерінде дүние жүзіне әйгілі Pugwash ғалымдар қозғалысының, Біріккен Ұлттар ұйымының, халықаралық ұйымдардың және дипломатиялық корпус өкілдерін, көрнекті саяси қайраткерлер мен қауіпсіздік саласындағы халықаралық сарапшыларды қарсы алу біз үшін үлкен құрмет. Баршамызды атом соғысы мен ядролық техногендік апаттар қатері болмайтын әлем құру деген ұмтылысымыз біріктіріп отыр. Қазақстан тәуелсіздікке қол жеткізген сәттен өзіне алған халықаралық міндеттемелерді мүлтіксіз орындап, ядролық қауіпсіздікті қамтамасыз ету мен ядролық қаруды таратпау ісіне сүбелі үлесін қосып келеді. Сондықтан әлемдік қоғамдастық Қазақстанды ядролық қаруға қарсы қозғалыстың көшбасшысы деп таниды. Қазақстан Республикасының іргесін қалаған президент Нұрсұлтан Назарбаевтың бүкіл адамзаттың бейбіт өмір сүру мен тұрақты болашақ үшін күрес жолындағы аса көрнекті үлесінің тарихи маңызы зор. Мемлекет басшысының 1991 жылы Семей ядролық полигонын жабу және ядролық қарудың қуаты жағынан әлемдегі 4-ші арсеналынан бас тарту туралы шешімдері жаһандық қауіпсіздікке қарай жасаған жауапты қадамның теңдесі жоқ үлгісі. Ladies and gentlemen, as you know, Kazakhstan is a party to all international agreements on nuclear disarmament, non-proliferation, and nuclear security. On the initiative of our country, the UN General Assembly adopted resolutions proclaiming the August 29, the date when the Semipalatinsk test site was closed, as the International Day against nuclear tests, and declaring September 26 as the International Day for the total elimination of nuclear weapons. Kazakhstan also sponsored the Universal Declaration of the Achievement of a Nuclear Weapon-Free World adopted by the General Assembly in December 2015. Against the backdrop of mounting international strains, this document proposed by the President of Kazakhstan is extremely important. Our country has been a staunch advocate of the Treaty on a Nuclear Weapon-Free Zone in Central Asia, signed in Semipalatinsk 2005. And I had the honor to personally sign this extremely important document. The establishment of the low-enriched uranium bank in the Kazakh territory is a vital contribution into strengthening the non-proliferation regime. Its launch will take place on August 29 this year in the presence of the President of Kazakhstan. As a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council, our country has been focusing on nuclear disarmament issues. We have been promoting initiatives voiced by the head of our state, that is to establish a global anti-nuclear movement and to build a nuclear weapon-free world by 2045, the year when the United Nations will celebrate its centennial anniversary. We are convinced that these actions to achieve nuclear zero are indispensable. Dear participants, nowadays, we are witnessing fundamental changes in international relations. We are facing new risks and threats such as the increasing number and expanding geography of conflicts, growing international terrorism, climate change, mass migration. Growing tension between the world powers and the pitfalls of sanctions aggravate the whole situation. Developments in nuclear security, especially the ongoing crisis on the Korean Peninsula, is a matter of serious concern. This rivalry and harsh rhetoric may have catastrophic implications for the whole region and the entire international system. In this regard, I would like to draw your attention to the Manifesto The World, the 21st Century, written by the President of Kazakhstan, Mr. Nazarbayev, where he warned of the danger and dire consequences of the global nuclear conflict. Against this background, Kazakhstan calls upon all states to step up international efforts to strengthen the regime of the Treaty on the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons and to bring into force the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty. We are convinced that a more secure world should be built not on nuclear deterrence, but rather on international trust and cooperation. The permanent members of the UN Security Council have a key role to play in achieving this noble goal. A fair exercise of rights of all states to peacefully use nuclear energy under the strict verification by the IAEA is crucial to promoting global nuclear security. The nuclear deal on Iran has raised the prospects of peace and stability in the Middle East. We are confident that the law-enriched uranium bank will ensure an assured supply of nuclear fuel to boost nuclear power industry. A risk that nuclear weapons and its components may fall into the hands of terrorists pose a real threat to the international community. Therefore, it's extremely important to tighten international control over production, use and recycle of fissile materials. Our future largely depends on reliable and safe energy technologies, including nuclear ones. Nuclear disasters in Chernobyl and Fukushima demonstrated that the price of engineering blunders in atomic energy can be too high. For this reason, all necessary security measures should be taken in the development of radiant energy technologies. In conclusion, I would like to express my confidence that this Pugwash conference will make a significant contribution to addressing nuclear security issues for the sake of peace and prosperity for all people. The recently established the Kazakh National Committee of the Pugwash Conference will take all efforts to contribute to the eventual success of the forum. Once again, I would like to wish you success and prosperity in this matter. Thank you very much.
Distinguished President of the Chairman of the Senate of the Republic of Kazakhstan in the Parliament, distinguished representatives sitting on this table, dear colleagues from Pugwash, ladies and gentlemen, as we start our work, may I express on behalf of Pugwash Conferences for Science and World Affairs our deep gratitude through you, Mr. Tokayev, to the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan for the generous offer to host this 62nd conference of our organization. And our heartfelt thanks also go to the authorities and people of this beautiful city of Astana for their hospitality during our activities. Pugwash also pays due tribute to President Nursultan Nazarbayev, under whose invaluable leadership Kazakhstan set an example for the world by categorically rejecting the possession of nuclear weapons and the continuation of the testing at Semipalatinsk. Kazakhstan was also a leader in the establishment of Central Asia as a zone free of nuclear weapons. I had the privilege myself of work together with Kazakh authorities at the United Nations for the establishment of August 29 as the day, the International Day Against Nuclear Weapons. 113 states are today members of such zones free of nuclear weapons in 5 continents, including, of course, Central Asia, the most recent one. It is the most recent addition to the string of treaties and other international arrangements in the field of non-proliferation of nuclear weapons. It is also important to recall the unilateral decision by Mongolia, also in Central Asia, in 1992, to make its territory free of nuclear weapons. Besides its steadfast commitment to the elimination of all weapons of mass destruction, Pugwash is dedicated to the peaceful resolution of conflicts through dialogue and mutual understanding. The activities of this organization address all issues that lie at the interface between science and world affairs. And this is particularly useful in several areas of the world where tensions are escalating and the risk of armed confrontation is particularly acute, and where Pugwash works together with interest parties in the search for constructive solutions. As Ambassador Dhanapala recalled, last July, we celebrated the 62nd anniversary of the Russell-Einstein Manifesto, which became Pugwash's founding charter. Manifesto was signed in 1955 by 11 scientists, 10 of which were Nobel laureates. And it is as relevant today as it was when first published. May I quote a short sentence contained in the manifesto, and it is, the question we have to ask ourselves is, what steps can be taken to prevent a military contest of which the issue must be disastrous to all parties? That is the quotation. And the international community has indeed taken some important steps, but much remains to be done. In spite of the efforts to develop and enact important legal measures, the number of nuclear-capable countries has increased to 9, and the destructive power of their nuclear armament is still being developed through the expansion and modernization of their arsenals. It is absolutely necessary to stop the continuing testing of nuclear weapons and means of their delivery by the People's Republic of Korea, in defiance of the condemnation by the world community. It is also imperative for the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty to enter into force as soon as possible. Since the Pugwash Manifesto in the 1950s, the risk of a catastrophic nuclear confrontation has increased. We need renewed dedication to the task of easing tensions and establishing the rule of law in international relations. One recent example is the adoption of the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons, which was received with hope by a large majority of the international community. Although once in force, this new instrument will not, by itself, bring about the elimination of nuclear arms, it represents a clear rejection of the possession and development of atomic weapons by any nation and points to a path towards nuclear disarmament. It is imperative that all states share in the urgent task of developing effective instruments that complement existing agreements in the field of non-proliferation and disarmament. The maintenance of peace and international security cannot be based forever on the threat of extinction of the human civilization. Pugwash stands resolutely for the repudiation of war and the use or threat of use of weapons of mass destruction in international affairs, and is determined to continue to work towards building trust and understanding among all nations in order to help realize the lofty objectives of mankind as a whole. And we are sure of Kazakhstan's support to our endeavors. Thank you very much.
His His Excellency Mr. Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, the Chairman of the Senate of the Republic of Kazakhstan, Dr. Paolo Cotta-Ramusino, Secretary General of Pugwash, Ambassador Jayantha Dhanapala, President of Pugwash, Ambassador Mikhail Bocharnikov, Ambassador of the Russian Federation to Kazakhstan, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, and dear friends. It is a great pleasure to be here today. I am well aware of the historic role Pugwash has played in seeking a world without nuclear weapons and of the ongoing collaboration with the United Nations. I would also like to thank the government of Kazakhstan for hosting this conference. Next Wednesday, we will commemorate the International Day Against Nuclear Tests, which also coincides with the anniversary of the closing of the Semipalatinsk test site. The institution of the International Day is a signature example of Kazakhstan's commitment to nuclear disarmament. I am indeed very humbled to speak in the presence of three of my predecessors, Ms. Kane, Mr. Dhanapala, and Mr. Duarte. The theme of this conference is highly pertinent, particularly because, as the UN Secretary General described, the world today is of new and old conflicts woven in a complex, interconnected web. This mix of old and new is also true for nuclear disarmament and non-proliferation. As an international community, we've made great strides since the darkest days of the nuclear era. We have seen massive arsenal reductions, global moratoria on nuclear testing and fissile material production, states renouncing nuclear weapons programs, and the institution of near universal non-proliferation regime. Above all, there has been consensus on the goal of a world free of nuclear weapons. Ultimately, however, the same danger that has haunted us for the past several years, 70 years, still exists. Thousands of nuclear weapons that could cause mass casualties, environmental devastation, or worse, mass extinction. At the same time, we face a range of new challenges to the global disarmament and non-proliferation regime. From deteriorating security conditions and shifting global balances to a suite of new technologies that are rapidly overhauling the status quo of our world's economy, society, and security, these new challenges complicate and exacerbate traditional concerns. This is what I would like to talk about today: the 21st century proliferation and arms race challenges. Challenges that are confluence of the old and the new. Let me be clear, when I say proliferation, I mean both vertical and horizontal. The former being the continued qualitative and quantitative improvements to nuclear arsenals, and the latter being the ongoing concern about the spread of nuclear weapons. The cessation of both horizontal and vertical proliferation is at the core of the grand bargain enshrined in the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, the NPT. Non-proliferation and disarmament are, in fact, two sides of the same coin under the NPT. It is a bargain that needs to be preserved and honored. Its erosion will not benefit anyone. First of all, the issue of vertical proliferation. As I noted, the world has made significant progress in the last 3 decades, much of it under the leadership of the two states with largest arsenals, the Russian Federation and the United States. However, I think it is inarguable that in recent years, that progress has ground to a halt. all nuclear-armed states are engaged in a qualitative improvement of their arsenals through expensive modernization campaigns that are expected to last for decades. Several continue to expand their stockpiles. Alarmingly, we have seen heightened rhetoric about the utility of nuclear weapons, and hundreds still remain ready to launch at the moment's notice. Even the significant arms control achievements of the Cold War, such as the Intermediate Nuclear Forces Treaty, are under threat. Disappointingly, the deep divisions that have beset our efforts to eliminate nuclear weapons remain. On a far more positive note, just last month, 122 states joined together to adopt a historic treaty on the prohibition of nuclear weapons. The treaty represents an important step and contribution towards the common aspiration of a world without nuclear weapons. This treaty is historic for two reasons. One, it places nuclear weapons on the same level as the chemical and biological weapons which are deemed in 1925 as incompatible with the principles of humanity. Two, it is the first multilateral treaty on nuclear disarmament in more than 20 years. It is also a manifestation of the frustration that many non-nuclear weapon states continue to feel about the slow pace and opaque manner in which commitments made under the Article 6 of the NPT are being implemented. As key member states that made the treaty emphasized that the Prohibition Treaty is to reinforce and complement the NPT and to push the implementation of its Article 6. No matter where you stand regarding the Prohibition Treaty, it is now an element of the framework of mutually reinforcing treaties that make up the disarmament and non-proliferation regime. It will reinforce the global norm against nuclear weapons. But the most important point to emphasize today is that it is past time for our shared disarmament norm to be implemented through concrete actions. There are several different ways to these concrete actions. The high-level panel on fissile material cutoff treaty and the group of governmental experts on disarmament verification are two useful initiatives. The 2020 NPT Review Conference, which will mark the 50th anniversary of the treaty's entry into force, will be another critical opportunity to take concrete steps. And it is less than 3 years away. I believe that if we are to truly make further strides towards a world free of nuclear weapons, there is an onus on the nuclear weapon states to resume the mantle of leadership and take actual practical steps. Number one, they should return to dialogue. The argument that security conditions are not right for further disarmament is, to me, specious if you're not prepared to at least sit down and talk. We cannot expect a reduction in tensions without the necessary confidence-building measures and transparency that dialogue provides. A resumption of the P5 dialogue through a ministers' level meeting, for example, will be a good place to start. They could aim to hash out an agreed approach to the review conference based at a minimum on how to implement the agreed 2010 action plan. The Russian Federation and the United States still possess some 90% of the world's nuclear weapons. Dialogue between the two on how to approach further reductions and other arms control issues is essential. more than any other states, these two have a responsibility to show the way. Number two, we should think about near-term risk reduction, transparency, and confidence-building measures that can be implemented. Based on the 2010 Action Plan and the 2015 President's Working Paper, a first step should be to continue lowering the operational status of nuclear weapons and working to ensure non-nuclear weapon states against their accidental use. A second step should be for nuclear weapon states to fully implement the transparency measures called for in 2010 related to reporting on nuclear disarmament-related undertakings. Neither of these is a substitute for irreversible reductions in weapons, but they will help improve the current climate and useful first steps. And they can be done with the political will. Number three, nuclear weapon states should work together to head off what is looming as a qualitative arms race. They could make a genuine contribution to global stability by agreeing to curtail the development of new nuclear weapons, especially those designed for first strikes. I'd like to move now to the second set of 21st century challenges, those related to horizontal proliferation. The non-proliferation regime designed around the NPT is indeed very robust. But it was also designed in the 1960s for a treaty that was intended as a stopgap, if you will, on the way to the elimination of nuclear weapons. We have had incredible successes in non-proliferation regimes since the NPT entered into force, as states have shown near universal commitment to the treaty and their undertakings. Unfortunately, the example of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and its illicit, destabilizing, and dangerous actions are a pointed reminder of the need for constant vigilance when it comes to nuclear non-proliferation. The introduction of nuclear weapons into already volatile regional conflicts adds an existential level of danger. The world of 21st century is one of open borders and global markets. People and goods move with unprecedented ease. So we must ask some fundamental questions today. Do we have the standards necessary to guard against proliferation when confronted with modern communications, transportation, and business practices? Do we have the highest standards for our safeguard systems? What other tools do we have at hand to improve the efficacy of the non-proliferation regime? What else might we need? The United Nations might not be the forum to address such questions, but as experts in science and technology, I pose the questions to you. The international community will somehow have to tackle these questions soon. The third issue I'd like to raise today relates to the global wave of technological revolution that is washing over us. The gains in information and communications technology made over the last 2 decades, coupled with more recent explosions in artificial intelligence capacity, as well as leaps in areas such as sensor technology, are impacting the global economy and international society. Combined with concurrent developments in military technology, they will have radical implications for peace and security. They will also pose significant nuclear proliferation challenges. For vertical proliferation, advanced new weapons such as long-range conventional missiles may induce fear in nuclear-armed states that their nuclear arsenals are being undermined and spur them into seek greater offensive or defensive capabilities, leading to destabilizing arms race, or to double down nuclear weapons as a guarantor of their security, leading to their increased entrenchment in military capabilities. Moreover, warfare that is guided by information technology and artificial intelligence will dramatically increase the speed of battle, leading to problems such as attribution, accidental launch, and escalation control, a worrying prospect for nuclear-armed states. Concerns have repeatedly been raised about cyber vulnerabilities of nuclear weapons, from hacking of command and control to actually launch a weapon, to spoofing of early warning systems to thinking they are under attack. For horizontal proliferation, states that are unable to match technological advances may seek nuclear weapons as asymmetric counters, or to undermine nuclear weapons through lower-cost technology, such as cyber capabilities. The portability of much of the new technology means it will become increasingly available to non-state actors, further muddying issues such as attribution. I'm not sure if the international community fully understands the risks posed by these emerging technologies, especially when it comes to the proliferation and even use of nuclear weapons, largely because their effects cannot be judged individually, but must be seen as a matrix of cross-cutting implications. Consequently, there is an urgent need to develop such an understanding, as well as the necessary measures and mechanisms to ensure international peace and stability. In doing so, we need to assemble the coalition needed for the 21st century. This necessitates doing a better job of incorporating industry, from where much of the technology is emanating, but also bringing civil society and academia onto the same page as states. I appreciate that the picture I have drawn today is a complex one that poses many challenges. But there will also be many opportunities to realize the shared vision of a world free of nuclear weapons. The key is getting to work immediately in a constructive, comprehensive, and cooperative fashion. This entails building bridges and seeking out the common ground that characterize so many of the achievements of the last 3 decades. In concluding, we can start by reaffirming our united and solid commitment to nuclear disarmament and engaging in the inclusive dialogue necessary to make it happen. As new UN High Representative for Disarmament Affairs, I would like to think through, with your help, how to re-energize the cause of disarmament and re-establish the political and the thought leadership of the United Nations in support of its member states. Thank you very much.
Your Excellencies, esteemed ladies and gentlemen, dear friends, first of all, I want to thank the Kazakhstan hosts for organizing this very important conference of the Pugwash meeting, the 60th anniversary of which we are marking now. If we look into historic perspective, the Pugwash movement was initiated by the first ever military use of nuclear weapons against the cities of Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And it was in this context that the movement was set. And with the years, the voice of the Pugwash movement was growing louder and gaining more strength, also in the context of international effort to curb the nuclear weapons, to curb the threat of a nuclear war. We remember, of course, the Non-Proliferation Treaty. We remember various arms reductions agreements that were completed over the years. It is in this context that the bold and resolute step of Kazakhstan to close down the Semipalatinsk testing site, was one of those very important measures. With the years, the international community has undertaken a lot of more efforts in the field of non-proliferation. I think we all realize the urgency of doing away with the last obstacles to entry into force of the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, of entering into force the nuclear weapons free zone in Central Asia. We are, in this light, we are very thankful to Kazakhstan for initiating the International Day Against Nuclear Weapons, which was really the initiative of Kazakhstan and which was embraced by the international community. We're all looking forward to another step taken by our Kazakhstan hosts in launching very soon the low-enriched uranium bank. We are really thankful for that. So in this context, allow me to present to you the address of the Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, which I will read out in Russian. Участникам 62-й Международной конференции Пугвашского движения ученых за мир, разоружение, международную безопасность и научное сотрудничество. Сердечно приветствую участников 62-й Пугвашской конференции ученых, посвященной знаменательному юбилею, 60-летию со дня проведения международной встречи, положившей начало сотрудничеству всемирно известных деятелей науки. За 6 десятилетий Пугвашское движение утвердилось в качестве авторитетного и востребованного форума, представляющего возможность для экспертного обсуждения актуальных проблем контроля над вооружениями, нераспространения и разоружения. Трудно переоценить его роль в сохранении атмосферы доверия и взаимопонимания в мировых делах, укреплении международного сотрудничества на основе принципов равноправия и учета интересов. В нынешней непростой ситуации, характеризующейся в том числе нарастанием факторов, подрывающих стратегическую стабильность, и распространением конфронтационных подходов к вопросам ядерного разоружения, несущих риски размывания основ действующего режима нераспространения, особенно востребован откровенный диалог между представителями академических кругов. Его проведение призвано способствовать предпринимаемым Россией и другими государствами усилиям по сокращению и ограничению вооружений, снижению напряженности, обеспечению мира, безопасности и стабильности. Убежден, что Пугвашское движение будет и впредь в числе наиболее активных участников такого открытого диалога. Желаю вам плодотворных дискуссий и всего самого доброго. Сергей Лавров. Спасибо. Спасибо. Thank you for your attention.
Sorry? This puts an end to the first part of our conference, which is the introduction, and I think we have heard a very interesting speech and comment. Now we take a very short break to prepare for the next session, which will be concentrated on the nuclear test ban.